South End Forum, and I think it's important. Phil asked me to present this, I guess because NEWRA voted on it, and I'm not made of kryptonite unlike rumor. So I was invited here to lead us through this. However, what I suggested to Phil was, at NEWRA, we brought in someone from the Back Bay who had actually drafted this resolution. Stephen Fox, who was the head of the South End Forum, is actually the father of the experimental space saver ban in the South End. A ban which the South End Residents Associations, 15 of them under the umbrella of the South End Forum, asked the city to put in place. The city looked at it as sort of a beta test for space savers. There'll be varying stories, depending on who you talk to at City Hall, of whether or not it was successful. But honestly, if you talk to most residents, and I'll let Steve speak for his associations, but I'm hearing that it's very successful. So the association, or the alliance of Downtown Civic Organizations, which both North End groups belong to, as well as 7 other groups representing downtown neighborhoods, thought that it would be a good idea to take a look at the learnings from the South End and put it into a resolution that every association can affix their signature to. I will read it very quickly, but it says, "We, the duly authorized representatives of blah, 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 request that the City of Boston refuse to recognize parking space savers of any kind for any reason in downtown Boston." And then we define it. We're not talking about Charlestown, East Boston, South Bay. We're not trying to dictate what Roslindale does, but for the downtown neighborhoods that are the members of this alliance, which I think have special status and special needs, we want to make sure that these are just not recognized, that space saver, the debris left in the streets be treated as waste, taken away, and that it become clear to people that this is just not something that's recognized. There's another clause to this. I won't read it because it's boring, but basically it speaks to the fact that there has been some rumor that the city might lighten up on street cleaning and not do any towing associated with street cleaning, which would sort of ruin street cleaning because you wouldn't get the streets cleaned if those cars were left there, even if they're ticketed heavily. So we're saying we don't want the city to hold back, but rather maintain the status quo and maybe even push for somewhat cleaner streets. So we came up with this. It's been going through the resident associations. It's been voted yes by Bay Village, Fenway, NEWRA, as you know, voted on it. I think Beacon Hill takes it up tomorrow, and Beacon Hill takes it up very soon as well. So we're gonna have all 9 having voted on it before too long. Let me ask Steve. Can you describe the South End's experience with a space saver?
Sure. As Ford said, the South End Forum represents 15 independent neighborhood associations for the South End, plus our 2 business associations. So it really represents the grassroots of both the commercial and the residential interests across the South End. And for 3 years, we've been talking about this. And 2 years ago, we actually tried it on our own. We asked for the cooperation of all the neighborhood associations to go out and spread the word in an education campaign to tell people not to use space savers. And we got minimal success because we didn't have an enforcement mechanism. And then in the past 2 years, we started negotiations with the city in terms of what did we need in order to create an environment where we would no longer see nasty notes, vandalism, the kind of environment on our streets that nobody wanted in the South End. And it's important to tell you that every decision that was made throughout this 3-year process was unanimous in the South End. Not one person objected at all. And what we did is we said to the city, we need your help. We need the trash contractor to pick up space savers that they see in the street. Anything that they find in the street aside from a car, cart it away. We need to have a per call, Mayor's Hotline, Citizens Connect. If you see one that's in the street that you want removed, because we found that the use of space savers tends to multiply after the first one appears. So one person does it, and then the next person does it, and pretty soon you get a whole street And once that happens, then people feel almost obligated to have to use a space saver because all the spaces have been saved. So we needed a methodology to eliminate the viral nature of space savers. And so we asked for the per call. And so the city agreed to send a public works truck to pick it up if in fact there was a per call request. What we also found is that there were pockets in the South End during this first year of beta testing of resistance. And we could identify those streets. And we could identify which neighborhoods were specifically non-compliant. And at the end of the day, after a first full year of full compliance with the cooperation of the trash contractor and the city, we had about 80% compliance throughout the entire year and about 20% non-compliance. And I say non-compliance in the sense that these were people who either continued to use it repeatedly or we found certain streets that just didn't recognize it. Part of our problem, we also recognized, was in some of our Spanish-speaking neighborhoods in the South End, the message didn't get communicated well. For example, our posters, and we're going to repair this next year, our posters were not printed in Spanish and English. And so sometimes we had problems in terms of communicating the idea because you've got the mayor standing on television saying that space savers are okay, but the South End is really the exception and it's really an experiment and sometimes it didn't translate well. So that's part of the reason why we got some non-compliance. That's sort of the history and the background. I really think it's better if I answer any questions that you have. I'm happy to do that. I brought a couple of the posters that we circulated so that you can take a peek at. We did a very intensive communications campaign, and every neighborhood had an opportunity to put these up throughout their neighborhoods, and we did it starting in September, so that by the time the first snow fell in January, we were pretty well prepared. Okay?
How did you find, versus years past, the streets being swept or being cleaned, or people parking there, just leaving their cars there? Like, what kind of results did you
Found a lot of that.
Yeah.
We found a lot of cars that were buried and didn't get unburied for months. But not, there were pockets. On some of our more traveled streets, you know, we really found that people were digging out a lot more. On some of the side streets, cars were there and until it was the Ice Age kind of thing. I will say this, that one of the things that compelled us to move forward on this was a lot of the business owners in the South End said, we need parking turnover in the South End. And we need people to be able to come in and go to our restaurants and go to our businesses and be able to park. And with space savers, it kind of eliminates that. Because once the saver goes out at 8 o'clock in the morning, that spot is not free for anybody to park in until the end of the day when somebody comes back and parks there. Now, lots of people have suggested, sort of methodologies that would allow people to sort of move in there temporarily and then come out. It just gets a little complicated on the street level. And we haven't been able to find a way to do it. But we're delighted to have the total cooperation of our business owners saying that this is really important for them in terms of having turnover in the streets.
I got a question for you. Do you guys, does the city provide parking during snowstorms in parking lots in the area like they do here in the North End?
Yes, during snow emergencies.
I think that there's no emergency should only apply for the streets that are no emergencies. I think that what we had take place here in the North End, everybody took their car to the parking lots, and
Yep.
then there were 4 feet of snow on that parking spot, which aggravated the situation further. Then you have people cleaning their spots,
Yep.
putting their snow on those spots,
Yep.
and those spots were gone for months. I was talking to the mayor not too long ago, and I asked him, it should only be for those folks who are parked in designated areas that are, for a small snow emergency. The way to do that is you put you give them a ticket or you give them a number
Yep.
for the car to be, not on the side streets, not everywhere else. Here, I think what happened was we lost spots to the fact that people were not
cleaning out.
not cleaning out the cars, which you should have to clean up your car. I mean, there's no way to ticket that car, there's no way to control any activity in that car if the snow is there for 3 months.
Yep.
The other one is, we should not be removing cars from the streets that are no snow emergency. Those cars should remain there, the owner of the car should be able to take the snow out, and the city's gotta take ownership for the snow.
Yep.
I mean, where are we supposed to put the snow?
Well, one of the things that just sort of an ancillary topic is that the South End Forum voted 2 years ago to ask the city, the South End, to be the first pilot program for year-round street cleaning. And when we say year-round street cleaning, we mean that when the snow flies, then we have snow removal. And we're still pushing that. We believe that that's really ultimately the only solution, is that once people get in the habit of moving their cars every Wednesday in the South End, you know, changing it. And by the way, we have, do you have extended street sweeping here in the North End? It starts in March and, okay, so we've got the same thing. We've got two extra months. So what we're asking for is that, you know, people continue to use the street sweeping methodology, and that the city then take advantage of that by cleaning the street on that side every Wednesday. Now, we've talked to Mike Dennehy, who's the Public Works Commissioner. He says that there's a financial issue associated with doing that on a citywide basis, but we're trying to get our foot in the door in terms of at least getting a pilot program, because I think it will make a dramatic difference on the streets.
My question is about just, you know, North End, South End, not to sound territorial, because I, you know, very much like this idea, but in all fairness, the South End has other areas of park, I mean, in the sense that it's maybe easier for you to distinguish certain streets for this kind of program, because there's parking in the back alleys, there seems to be a lot of alternatives for residents in many of the sections to either own parking or be able to park in resident-only spots that aren't on the busy commercial streets that probably the merchants want to see, where they want to see this turnover occur. So do you see any, I mean, just knowing the North End, the way that our layout is, you know, rather awkwardly structured,
Yes.
narrow streets, a very different, you know, this was settled long before the South End was filled in. You know, is it, in all fairness, is it possible to do something like that on that scale as an all neighborhood effort?
Well, speaking as a South Ender, let me tell you, finding a parking spot is still tough for me. And I park on the street, okay? In a residential area with a resident parking sticker. And, you know, I would say the advantage that we have in the South End, you're right, is alley parking. But that's really limited to some of the major thoroughfares. We have a lot of sections of the South End that resemble the North End, where there's, you know, it's basically 2 lanes. One side is parking, and then it's just one way going down. But I think you're right in terms of saying that we have the ability to use those alleyways, but we don't have lots, and we don't have parking garages, except for buildings, big buildings that have built it into their own buildings.
Maybe I'm just confused about the boundaries between the South End and the Back Bay area, but
Oh, well,
there are quite a few lots
Berkeley-
very, very close
No,
to it.
well, okay, Berkeley to Mass Ave, Albany Street to the Southwest Corridor. That's the South End.
The alleys in the South End tend not to be public, a lot of them, and those that are, there are a lot of them that are not paved. And you won't find very many parking spaces accessible, unlike the Back Bay, where it's just sort of, the alleys have become parking lots.
Correct.
Many cars, but you go to many of the South End neighborhoods, they're dirt, and there's just maybe
That's it.
a half dozen cars parked back there, so it's not.
I know,
it's
I
not-
mean, maybe
Where's
we're
your-
talking about different streets, I see quite a few strategic lines of cars, I mean, maybe 2 per building, but they seem to be using it pretty
Some,
systematically.
but not as many
What
as
is,
Back
what
Bay.
is the, you know, how many square miles is the South End?
Oh, God, you're gonna ask me that.
Well,
I should know, right?
It plays, you know, we're under a square mile here, there's
Yeah.
10,000 people living here. Most people have cars, you know, I mean, I think that the issues are, you know, we tend to put the burden on the citizenship of the city, not the people who manage it for the citizenship. I think that the issues here are, we need the city to be more proactive on the things that, you know, the new administration is trying to do. I don't find that the space savers are a solution, but also you need people to realize that some folks don't come out and move their cars, you know what I mean? And the guy who comes around and takes it out, could dig up the whole block before anybody else comes out with a shovel, you know,
Well-
particularly here. Mind you also, that you guys do not have the demographics or the activity that we have. We're one of the biggest tourist attractions in Boston. I mean, we have
Correct.
thousands of people coming here every day, And one of the common denominators of questions that people ask when they call a local business is, I'm looking for parking. I mean, I'm looking to find a parking spot, so those are issues. And again, we're a much smaller
Yeah.
space than you guys are. You are several, you gotta be at least a couple dozen blocks wide and deep. We are only maybe 6 block inches, you know,
Yeah.
in diameter. So, I mean, obviously, for example, the pilot program that they imposed here with the street cleaning, I would argue, if we did a census of everyone in North End today, 90% of people would say the streets are still dirty.
Yep.
I mean, and that we're getting taken and told and punished
Yep.
for the shortcomings of the city doing their job with the money they already received to do that, because we all pay taxes, you know what I mean? So,
You know, I think, you know, that it's really hard actually to get our arms around this issue when we've just had such a nice spring day that felt like summer. I mean, to be talking about space savers is a little surreal right now. But I think it's really important to just point out, sort of in summary, that first of all, you know, space savers are very popular. The press loves to write about them for whatever reason. All the kids at Northeastern and Suffolk at BU Journalism School calling, they want interviews. And I asked them, why? Why is this so interesting? They say, because it's so weird. Because in my city, Chicago, Phoenix, San Francisco, Portland, we wouldn't even think of doing that. And then the foreign tourists come in. Oh, have you ever heard of this idea of saving a space? No, it's done nowhere else. It's bizarre. It's a peculiarity of certain downtown neighborhoods that, through communications and like that effect you're talking about, magnified by social media, people have seen, you know, a lot of young people, a lot of young professionals have seen, hey, they're doing it in Southie, why can't we do it here? The problem that we're having, I think, in the North End is that we had a horrible snow removal season. And the city, there are many factors, obviously big winter, but you know what, 96 was a big winter too. And there was no problem in 96.
No.
Oh, 96 was,
When I was running a business,
Yeah, I was here too. It was
I
10
owned 3
inches
buildings
less.
and I owned 6 cars, so I mean, believe me, we had problems in 96.
we had,
And I would argue that there was a bigger effort made this year to remove snow than had ever been, and we got a lot more snow.
We got a lot more in
We
a
got a lot more
concentrated
snow,
time.
but within reality, okay? With all these things, we keep on asking the citizens of the city of Boston to step up to the plate and do the right thing. We need to ask the city to do the right thing.
We're in agreement.
But here's something.
It's a proactive thing. I mean, we can't just expect the city to do a better job. We're not.
Yeah, the city.
I don't get me wrong, I don't subscribe to putting up savers for anything.
Or
It's
his.
about, it's a parking spot on the street, I understand.
Yes.
But also, you need to make it so, I mean, what happened this year with the snow, guys, we got more snow than we've gotten in way longer than 20
No
years.
question
okay?
about it.
And it was all at once, and it was over 45 days. We had a 45-day winter.
Yeah.
It was warm before it started snowing. And
You know what, 4 of the last top 10 snowstorms have happened in the last 10 years. We gotta get used to getting snow around here. And the issue with space savers is, I think it was clearly an impediment to snow removal.
Totally.
We didn't get plowed because, oh,
But
people
listen, I've been
always
here
had
for
space
30
savers.
years, I've been in North End for 30 years. Space savers are something that some neighbors put out, not everybody does, okay? And it hasn't been an issue before.
Up and down Commercial Street. You know, one of the funniest things I saw in Commercial Street, I'll just close with this, that, you know, the Commercial Street, you know, is, because they put the bike lanes in, it's one southbound lane and 2 northbound lanes. Okay, so the snow comes and they don't plow at all, and we lose the parking space. It narrows, it's only 1 lane in each direction, and another snowstorm comes in, and people are putting the space savers out 10 feet from the curb, 15 feet out from the curb, finally 20 feet out of the curb. I remember once I was walking across Commercial Street and I saw someone with a space saver. It had to be 20 feet from the curb. It wasn't in a
Why
parking
was it
space.
20 feet away from the curb?
Well, because the interpretation of what is a space kept moving. Oh, well, you know, that can't be
Because
space.
there's no
But the
removal,
thing,
you know what I mean?
because
But again,
there are no rules in space savers. It's a jump ball all the time. There are no rules in space savers. So we're saying, let's just ban them.
One of the other things, just so you know, the South End didn't have a problem with space savers 5 years ago. This is a relatively new phenomenon for us. But every year, it's been getting, that we've seen increasing usage.
But you know what we see increasing, you know what we see increasing problems with? The city doing their job.
Oh, wait, no,
Okay,
I-
so they're not removing the
I'm
garbage,
with you.
but we gotta
Yeah,
talk,
yeah.
if we're not removing this, we're not gonna remove the snow.
From all the
Yeah.
esteemed council.
Why wasn't Commercial Street plowed? You can't park in that street during a snowstorm.
You know, it's a really good question. I mean, you know, I think that there's a lot that DPW has to analyze about
I'll be
what
honest
went
with
wrong.
you, I'll be honest with you, if you want to park on Commercial Street after a snowstorm and it has been plowed, I'd put a space saver there too.
And it happens, and that's why they kept moving out, but you know,
That's the city's fault.
that's the thing, well, it is the city's fault, but
I mean, you
with
can't park it
this,
during a snowstorm for that reason, it's supposed to be clean 3 days later.
if you talk to some people in DPW, they'll say, well, how could we plow? Because there were all these space savers out and we weren't allowed
There
to.
was no.
So,
ties
you know,
there. There was no
it's
ties
just-
there.
They don't go all the way to the curb, they
Yeah,
just.
that's the
And
problem.
that's part of what we're trying to say, is that we're hoping that we can, in the meantime, we're trying to say, let's not use space savers because we really think it cuts down on available spaces. Think of it, you know, there's a space saver there at 8 o'clock in the morning, and no one can park in that space for the entire day until 5 o'clock PM, until that person comes home. We had to establish a fund this year in the South End to reimburse all the people that got vandalized. That 20% that didn't comply, they were the ones that vandalized, that broke the tires, that smashed windshields. For the first time this year, windshields were smashed on Beacon Hill. You know, I mean, and we can reimburse all of the residents of the South End that came forward and filed a police report and said, we don't want to put up with this vandalism. And so all of us came together and did it. What we're saying is, we don't really want to create that kind of an environment in the South End next year or any year after. And so we're feeling very strong about what you're saying is we need to do a better job of snow removal and snow plowing. This year's snow plowing, I think, was a challenge, but I also think that there could have been some better technologies used. We've actually urged the city to buy Bobcats, because we thought that Bobcats would have done a far better job than bringing in the big trucks.
I need to tell you though, I mean, we keep on asking the city for more things, and what we get is we get more taxes, we get more tickets, we make more violations, and we get less solutions, you know what I mean? So I would say, you know, as we lobby for a better city, we should continue to think of the citizen first. And you know, we did it with the garbage removal. We ended up with 2 days of garbage removal. We live with our garbage now. Now, let me finish forward.
Sure.
All right? We did it with the garbage removal. We did it with the street cleans. The thing is a carousel, because we're not big enough to have the amount of street cleaning that we have, as often as we have, with the poor result that we get. Okay? A machine with a guy who's talking on the phone or texting does not clean the street the same way that you do with vacuums and blowers and brooms, who can be done all the time without inconveniencing the citizen. So what I'm saying is that these small groups who represent big society, big communities, okay, most of the people out there don't even know we're having these conversations behind their back, right? But we continue to allow the city to come up with a new regulation, a new enforcement. Now we're going to do this, now we're going to do that. And what happens is at the end of the day, the inconvenience is still there, and we get penalized with either taxes or more penalties. So what I would argue is, let's come up with a solution in which the people we pay to do a job, do their job, and the rest of us are going to live life.
Ultimately, our hope is that we're trying to do things better for the South End community in terms of making life easier for our people. And thus far, the feedback that we're getting is pretty positive.
But that's what I'm wondering. So what did they, those that complied, did they get their spots removed, like that they saved? I mean, how was that?
Those that
So those that complied with the system of not putting their space savers up, did you
Yeah.
go back and poll everyone and say, what did you think
I
about this program?
got a dozen messages from South Enders who said, Steve, I really want to thank you, and I want to thank the South End Forum for taking this initiative. For the first time, I'm actually able to have my sister come over and visit and find a parking space. And we're not seeing parking savers, and people don't feel threatened by, you know, whenever they leave their current parking space. And we had a number of people who came to us and said, I used a space saver and I paid somebody $30 to shovel out my parking space, and I should be able to keep that space. And we had to help people to understand that you paid to shovel out your car, not to reserve a space on the street. And people started to say, okay, I understand the difference, and I'm okay with that. And people were willing to say, if everybody is going to comply with this, and people are really feeling strongly about it, then I'm willing to go along with it. I think that in the South End, our experience is that people don't want to use space savers. They kind of feel forced to use it as a result of other people using it. And that's what sort of spreads like wildfire.
Has any of the cars been vandalized?
Say once again?
Has any of the cars been vandalized?
Yes. We had four reported vandalisms, tires slashed, Boston public school
This is without
teachers.
using the space saver.
Uh,
Without using the space saver.
Well,
So somebody-
this is actually interesting, because in one of our cases of vandalism, somebody else, meaning the city, removed the space saver, and one of our residents parked there. And so whoever had put the space saver there didn't know that it wasn't this guy that had removed the space saver, it was the city, and so they vandalized his car. And so he sort of paid the price, which is why we in the forum felt obligated to pay for his vandalism, because it wasn't his fault. And that's why, on the enforcement angle, it's really important that we get the word out that in all likelihood, if a space saver is removed, it's not the guy who's parked in your spot who removed it, it was the city or the trash contractor.
One question, you mentioned something, there is no ordinance, no rule on this subject, right? There's no law
Correct.
that says you can't do it.
The
It's
law-
done, it's done when the mayor says you can do it, or when he says you can't do it. I think you should be concentrating on the mayor's judgment, not the parks department, because the parks department's gonna tell them.
Or DPW.
Or DPW, the mayor's gonna tell them what to do.
Well, in the case of the South End, because the South End community wanted to ban space savers, we went to the mayor and we asked him specifically, and we said, would you support a pilot test? And he said,
You're making my point.
he said
You went
yes.
to the mayor.
That's correct. But that's why I'm saying that if other neighborhoods, I'm not arguing, I can only speak for the South End. But, you know, but if other neighborhoods want to join that and say to the mayor, we want to join this ban, then I think he's gonna listen to
Well,
that.
say that because you kept saying
We have-
the city.
Yeah.
And it's-
Okay, guys,
You're
thank you,
correct.
Stephen, thank you. We're gonna have to take a vote, we have a lot of people ready to.
Sorry for
No,
that.
it's okay, thank you very
Philip,
much.
I think
Thanks,
some people
everyone,
have
for
had.
questions.
So once
All
again-
right, you guys wanna vote and pass things up now, we'll call,